Welcome to the Code with Jason meetup. Here's what we're going to do today. Let me share my screen. Um, so in the last session, I discovered some weaknesses in my domain model. So I'm working on adding the ability to invite other users to a project. Right now, you can use SaturnCI as a solo user, but it doesn't really work for collaboration. Um, And, SaturnCI integrates with GitHub. So I thought it's probably good if my domain model at least doesn't conflict with GitHub's domain model. It doesn't have to, it doesn't have to like be dictated by GitHub's domain model, but it should at least not conflict. Um, and I discovered something that's definitely a problem. Um, For one, I have this concept of accounts, and it doesn't really match up to GitHub's conception of accounts. But we don't have to get into that part right now because there's an even more fundamental issue, which is that what I'm currently calling a project, GitHub calls a repository, which makes more sense. And also, GitHub has a different concept called a project. So that would be confusing if I allowed that concept to persist. So what I'm doing is taking everything that's called a project and renaming it to a repository. And I just barely started that last session, and so we'll continue that today. And it's actually not that easy because it's a pretty deeply baked in name, so we'll have to approach this in a careful way.
So the plan is to align as much as possible with the GitHub model, is it?
Yeah,
Okay. Makes sense. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And in addition, what I'm calling a project, even outside of GitHub, calling it a repository, I think makes a lot more sense. So it's just a good move all around. Okay.
Now you have made me curious to see what's a project on GitHub.
Yeah, I don't really understand. And I'm not too concerned with it for my purposes. But yeah, I was surprised to see that. I had never heard of a GitHub. Maybe that's not true. I think it's for like issue tracking and stuff like that.
No. Okay. With it.
Yeah. Okay. So I have my model called project and this new model, it's not even committed yet, called repository. And what I've done is I took the project model and I renamed it to repository and I put it in this repository file. And then I changed the existing project model so that it's empty. It just inherits from repository. Um, and I did that previously with a different model name change, and that worked well. So I'm going through that same process again here. Welcome, Jeff. I'll catch you up really quick. Long story short, I'm renaming my project model to repository. Okay, so here's where I left off last time. Honestly, I don't really remember because I haven't looked at this in a few days. So let's see what's different. There's this change that I just showed. What else? Okay, there were some like associations that I had to change. Oh, I remember. Okay. I think I remember at least. So let's look at one file in particular. Whoops. Okay. So renaming project to repository is not the only change that I have in progress. I'm also renaming build to test suite run. Um, and build is a really, really deeply baked in name. and changing it all at once is just like super duper not realistic. So as I've been touching things that involve build, I've been renaming them to test suite run. Kind of my rule is that I don't want to go backwards. I don't want to commit myself more deeply to the name of build. So if there's any change that I make that would cause me to more deeply commit myself to the name build, I stop, and in a separate branch, I'll rename build to test suite run, and then I'll continue with my change so that I don't go backwards and make more work for myself. So here's a case of that. In the course of renaming project or repository, we came across an instance where, for some reason, I don't remember why, it made sense to rename build to test suite run. Um, so I don't want to mix this change where I rename build to test suite run. I don't want to mix that change in with this project repository change because those two changes don't depend on each other. I can make this change independently. And if it turns out that anything is wrong with either one of those changes, I don't want to have to roll them back as a pair. I'd rather have them each be individual. And if somebody from the future is looking back at this commit, I'd rather have them see two separate commits with its own understandable set of changes rather than having all these changes in one commit, which might be confusing. So I'm going to make this change on its own before I make these other changes. So let's figure out how to do that. I can add this. Okay. Now, is this change related to that other change? Okay, I believe it is. This is a case of renaming build to test suite run. So I think I want to add this file too. Okay, now I'll go on a fresh branch and I will commit just this. Let's see, this is test suite run list. Call it that, I guess. Then I'll do a git commit. And we'll push this. Okay, and here this test suite run is running. So in a few minutes, we should know if that's going to pass or not. Um, and I made some fundamental changes to my how my infrastructure works, so I'm going to check on something, make sure everything's going as expected. No, that's not what I meant to do. Okay, so I just started this test suite run, and so I see that it's provisioning 4 new runners, which is what's supposed to happen. And then in about a minute or so, they should go from provisioning to available. And then shortly after that, 2 of them, because I have parallelism set to 2, 2 of them should go from available to running. Okay. Yep. I see this one's still provisioning. Now this one's assigned. This one's available. This one's assigned. They go into an assigned state briefly before they go into a running state. Okay. And in this one, we now have an error state. That's interesting. Okay, so previously we had these four runners: disappointed rifle, sleepy cupcake, soiled beard, and beautiful planet. Okay, and now, okay, disappointed rifle, I think was the top one before. Yeah. So I think because it went into an error state, it started provisioning two more automatically so it could recover from that fault. Let's see what's happening now. Okay. So now we have even two more provisioning. I wonder what's going on. Yeah, nothing's running yet. Okay, and we have an error state again. We seem to be stuck in a loop of errors. Okay, let's try to figure out what's going on with that. The first thing I'm going to try is just restarting my Rails server and seeing if that has an effect. I don't know why it would, but it's cheap to try, so might as well. Okay. Yeah, it just keeps cycling. And I don't know if it's ever going to get anywhere. So currently, the way this system works is if a runner goes into this error state the way these do, it'll give up and it'll move on to a different runner. And every so often, any runners in an error state will get swept away. But that's kind of bad because then I can't look into it and see what went wrong. So maybe I should change it so that the ones in an error state don't get swept away. Okay, so let's stash my current changes. Oh, and by the way, if we go to production, are things working on production or not? Okay, it's not started on production. I'm going to start it and see what happens. All right, we'll just let that go in the background. Okay, so let me try to remember where this code lives. So here's the test runner model. Oh, I remember there's like periodic background job or something. Oh yeah, there was something called like supervise or something like that. Supervise test runners. Test runner supervisor. Okay. Okay, delete errored test runners. Okay. So maybe I don't want to do that. Um, I'll just delete this. All right, so now let's see. Let me think. Okay, I have this thing that runs the test runner supervisor. I have to restart it. Now let's check on our test runners again. Okay, and we do have two test runners that are actually running. And if I check here, yep, I see that tests are running. Okay, so I don't know what went wrong. And we don't have any runners in an error state, so I won't be able to look into those errors and see what went wrong. But at least I made that change where I took away the thing that deletes the errored runners so that if and when this happens again, I will be able to look into it at that time. Okay, so let's commit that. Remove mechanism that deletes errored test runners. Okay, so this batch of tests has finished running. This one's still going. So as soon as this finishes, we'll be able to tell whether the test suite passed. And I see a failure right here. I believe that's actually a flake, but we'll take a closer look once the test suite finishes. Okay, it is finished now, or at least according to this it is. There we go. Okay, so this active link test failed and this failed. Hmm, that's interesting. I don't know if it's a flake or not. I'll run these locally. In the meantime, I'll get another test suite running and see what happens. Um, let's try this locally. Excuse me. Okay,
Bless you.
thanks. Okay, we're running this test. See what happens. Okay, it fails. And if we run it on main, does it actually pass? Hmm, it does. So this is not a flake. This is a legitimate failure. Okay, so why might that have failed? First of all, what is this test even? And which one failed? Line 43. Okay, so this says active link, page load. It sets the first test suite run link to be active. Okay, interesting. So when this is working, I'm gonna go back to main. When this is working, what does that look like? Okay, so this is what it looks like. I don't know what that means though. Expect test suite run link 1 to be active. All right, so I guess that must be this one because I can see that it has this blue active state. Okay, and then on this other branch where the test is failing, what does the failure look like? I'm guessing it's just not blue. Yeah. Okay. So let's see why that is. My question I'm asking myself is what makes it blue? And also, what exactly did we change? I don't remember. So this is what we changed. Test suite run list. We changed builds to test suite runs. Okay. Okay. Um, yeah, and this failed. which is not surprising because we determined those are not flakes, they're legitimate failures. Okay. Um, I'm gonna remind myself yet again. Okay, so this was test suite runs list. Test suite runs list. Okay, so presumably this code is relevant because when I changed this, it caused this bug. Okay, let me try to orient myself. So I see these links here, filters and hide filters. That is this. Okay, so that's where we are. We have this test suite run filter component. That is this thing here. Test suite run list. That is this. Okay.
Oh.
So this is maybe a clue. We have builds and active build. So what did we change from build to test suite run? Test suite run list. Okay, where does test suite run list come into the picture? What renders this list partial? Test suite runs list. Okay. Is there test suite run show? Let's do it like this. Okay. And we should do grep render. Okay. Yeah, so I see list items and test suite run link, but not list itself. Oops. So where does list get rendered from? Here it is. Maybe test case runs list. Okay, this is test suite runs list. Hmm. Okay. How do I figure out where this gets called from? Um, okay, where am I here? We're on the build show page, I believe. Okay. Okay, and it's rendering test suite runs overview, which is this. When we're rendering test suite run component. Oh, it's being rendered from a component, must be. That's why we didn't get it in the grep. Here it is. Test suite runs list. Okay. Hmm. So what I'm curious about is where this build instance variable is coming from. This is one reason why I'm increasingly preferring view components is because these instance variables are just global variables and it's often mysterious where they come from. I don't like that mystery. So this is getting rendered from a view component, but there's this instance variable involved. Um, and I'm very confused how this can be. Where is this getting rendered from, this component? It's getting rendered from here. Okay, so build must be getting set in the controller. Welcome, Felix. Although I don't see. Oh, here we go. So this is where build is getting set. All right, so that solves that mystery. But is that even relevant to the picture? Hmm, maybe. So there's some coming through in the chat. Yeah, thanks for being here, Felix. Um, okay. So this is the active test suite run. But here it's called active build. Hmm. Okay, let's go into this list items partial. Okay, and we have build and active build, which is outdated language. Test suite run link. Okay. And here is where the active class gets set or not. So something must be going wrong here. Excuse me. Um, and I'm guessing that it's comparing a build object to a test suite run object, and that's why it's not working. Just out of curiosity, if we set the ID instead, does that make this test pass? It does make it pass. Okay. So I don't think that's what we want our ultimate solution to be, because that just kind of that addresses the symptom, not the root cause of the problem. But I think addressing the symptom is a decent first step. Fix active link bug. All right, and let's see what happens with the test runners now. Okay, since unlike last time, we already had some test runners available, it was able to immediately make an assignment. And now this test suite run is running. Okay, great. That should be done in about 3 minutes. Okay. In the meantime, let's go back to where we just were. Okay, test suite run link. And we started from I think it was build show, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. Yeah, and that was rendering this test suite run component. And that was rendering test suite run list. Yeah. Okay, so what do I want to do here? I don't like having this build instance variable. Test suite runs overview, but I'm not concerned with that right now. I'm concerned with test suite run component and test suite runs list. So test suite run list is still using this build instance variable. Let's change that. Hmm. Test suite run list. So I have this object called test suite run list, which as a reminder models this list here. Um, and then we have a partial for that same idea. Do we want to merge these and turn them into a view component perhaps? But when I came over here, I noticed that we have some stuff going wrong. All right, the test suite isn't done yet, but we do see a problem here. I'm going to run this locally and see what happens. Hmm. Okay. So this is a legitimate failure also. Oh, expected build.count to have changed. Um, so maybe, well, I'm not even going to hypothesize about this one. Let's go into the test and see what might be going on. This is weird because it's really not easy to imagine how this might be relevant. Um, okay, API GitHub events. Okay, maybe what I want to do is tail the logs and see if there's anything interesting in there. Okay. It's a little hard to tell what I'm looking at. I'm going to create some space here. Okay, so this is the beginning. Hmm. It's very much not obvious what the problem is. We go to main, I assume it passes, but let's just check to be extra sure. It does. Okay. Um, so here's what I'm going to do now to make this diagnosis process a little bit easier. I'm going to go to GitHub and I'm going to make a pull request. Then we'll go to the changes. Okay. So this is everything that changed. And so how could any of these changes that I made affect this, either this controller or this test? It's just expecting a 200 response, but now it's not getting a 200. It's getting 422. Oh, maybe it's getting to here. Let's see if it is. Okay, it is. Okay. Mystery solved. Undefined method ID for nil. Okay, so that is this. So we have to open this file. And I'm imagining that we just have to do this. Yeah. Okay. So active build was nil sometimes. And that's why that failure was happening. Okay. Oh, and this kicked off a test suite run because I opened a pull request. I can just delete this one. Okay. So again, that should take about 3 minutes, and then we'll know if everything passes. Um, Now we can turn our attention again to um, builds controller. We're in the show action. Renders test suite run component, which renders test suite runs list. Okay, and so I was contemplating the fact that I have both this test suite run list template and this test suite run list object. Maybe it makes sense to create a view component out of them. So I think that would mean changing this to be a view component. But I think that would start to be too many changes on one branch. So if I do that, I think I want to do it on a new branch. Um, let's see. And I'm trying to think, would that new branch depend on the changes from this branch? I believe it would. So I don't want to branch off of this branch because that would be too much to mentally keep track of. So I want to wait until this branch is passing and we can merge it. Looks like we just have about a minute left. And I'm just checking production to see how things are going. Looks like it ran, although it failed. Just for fun, I'm going to run another one. Okay, about 30 seconds left. Okay, this one's done. Everything passed. Should be done any second now. Okay, it did not all pass. Let's see if this passes or fails locally. Failure. Interesting. Okay, so line 28 was one example. Oh, and this has to do with the test suite run list again, which is interesting. So this is the infinite scroll. I'm going to manually test the infinite scroll and see what happens. Yeah, it doesn't work. Interesting. Are we able to see some errors when I try that? Yeah, undefined. I saw it there. Undefined method builds, for instance of test suite run list, builds controller line 18. Okay. Hmm. So this should be test suite runs. Okay, now that passes. And if we run all the tests in this file, what happens? Okay, everything passes. Fix infinite scroll bug. Okay, and now I'll be very surprised if not everything passes. So we'll wait about 3 minutes. In the meantime, we can get all of our stuff pulled up again. Builds controller, show action, test suite run component, and then test suite run list. All right, so while we're waiting, we can go ahead and do Rails generate component test suite run list. Okay, and then we can go to test suite run list. We can open up the template, and then we can go test suite run list component, and then we can just move everything from here to here. And then we can delete this file. Okay, and then we can go to test suite run list and test suite run list component, and we can move everything from here to here, and we can delete this file, and we can change this to rendering a component. I think that'll be something like render test. Yep. Let's say, yeah. I don't know why I picked these. That doesn't seem right. We'll do these. Okay, current tab name, test suite run list. I don't think that applies anymore. But where was that coming from? Where was that coming from? Test suite run component. Yeah, okay. Oh, interesting. That's why the AI thought I wanted these arguments. Hmm, interesting. Okay. So let's actually go back to that. So project branch name and statuses. And here we have current tab name, test suite run list, and test suite run filter component. Okay, so test suite run list doesn't apply anymore because that's what the test suite run list component is. This filter I don't think applies. Hmm, interesting. That's how the filter is being done. Huh, that seems kind of funny to me. Okay. Um, All right. And then here we have the project, branch name, and the statuses. Okay. That's kind of interesting because to me, those seem relevant to the filter. Hmm. Let's check on our test run though and see. Okay, it passed. So we can merge that branch now. We'll stash all this stuff. Yes. Okay, and that'll kick off a new test suite run. Wonderful. Now we can do a git stash pop. Okay, and we have this test suite run list component. Um, and what was rendering it? What was rendering it? This, I think. Okay, test suite run list component. All right, I think if we simply refresh the page, it'll break. Yeah. Okay, so maybe we can let these failures inform our changes. Okay, test suite run list component, line 3. All right. Test suite run list components, test suite run list component template. Okay, so it's saying undefined method project for nil, it's saying build is nil. That's not surprising. So previously it was getting sent build from build show, I think. So test suite run component. Okay. So even here, instead of going off of this build instance variable, I think we should say add or reader build, and then do that. So then we know it's coming from the current view component. Um, Man, this is kind of a lot to think about. I might do this in a different way. Let's blow all this away. Okay, all that's gone now. Test suite run component. Okay, so we're back here. We have this test suite run list, but we're passing in the test suite run filter component, which seems a little potentially weird to me. Again, this is the list and this is the filter. Um, and apparently the way this is conceived, the list depends on the filter, or the filter is conceived as being part of the list, which I guess makes sense because the filter does determine what's in the list. So it kind of makes sense that the filter is a property of the list. Okay, but let's dig deeper into this. Test suite run filter component. That gets, okay, test suite run list. Test suite run list. Okay, we just render the component like this. Okay, so we have like these hide and show links, and we render the component, and that's all that we do with the filter stuff here, apparently. Okay. And then if we look at test suite run list, the object, I don't see anything to do with filters in here. Okay, for whatever that's worth. Um, and then test suite run component. We're initializing this filter in here. Is that appropriate? Why don't we do that somewhere else? Is there a good reason? Test suite run filter component. Okay, it takes build, branch name, statuses, and current tab name. Here we have project branch name statuses, but no current tab name. Hmm. I'm just trying to think, is this like the most logical and tidy way to organize all this or not? Okay, this passes, which is good. I just wanted to check on that. Test suite run list. Test suite run list. And we're passing in a filter component. Hmm. How do I make this decision? Hmm. Well, maybe I do want to just make the test suite run list component and pass in the filter just like I'm doing now. Kind of seemed like I didn't want to do that, but maybe I do want to do that. Okay, we'll do this Rails generate component thing again, and all that work I just did, I'll do it over again, but that's not a big deal. So we have the Ruby file for the component, and we have the template for the component. Okay, test suite run list. Move all that to here. Delete this file. Test suite run list template. We'll move all that to here and delete this file. Okay. And then in test suite run, we can now change this test suite run list component. And this will like totally fail. I'm going to copy all this and put that there. All right, so this will not even come close to working, but it's a starting point. Okay, so first we get this error about test suite run list, test suite run component, okay? Test suite run list. Where is that? Line 17 of test suite run component. That doesn't make sense. App components, test suite run component.rb, line 17. Test suite run component. Okay. Yeah, it's this. So we don't want this. That's useless now. Okay, now in test suite run component, the template, yeah, that doesn't make sense anymore, so we'll get rid of that. Okay, Unknown keywords, blah, blah, blah. Test suite run list component line 4. Yeah, so our initializer is no good. Project branch name statuses. Let's add current tab name and test suite run filter component. Yeah. I don't know if I want nils for default, so I'm going to take those away. Okay. Undefined method project for nil. That is not surprising. Build.project. So here, instead of build.project, we can just do this. Reader project. And any place where there's build.project, we can just replace it with project. Okay. But now we have problems because our route is no good. It thinks the project ID is nil. Okay. That is on test suite run list component line 3. Okay. Yeah, I don't know how this was ever. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, because we don't have the instance variable anymore. We need the build still. And where might that come from? We don't have it anymore. So I think here we need to pass the build, aka test suite run. Okay, see you later, Sanjit. Thanks for coming. And I should wrap up in a second myself because we're at the end of the hour. Okay, so test suite run component, that's here. So I can do adder reader build and do this. Although really I should call it test suite run. Okay. Okay, thanks for coming, Felix. Okay, test suite run build. All right, so here we should be passing test suite run.
I feel your pain, Jason.
Regarding,
Refactoring things
oh yeah,
and trying to track down all the name changes.
yeah, it's it's tricky. Okay. So test suite run equals test suite run, but now we no longer have project, but that's not a big deal because it apparently only appears in one place. And here, let's instead do add a reader test suite run. Okay, so project builds path. I forget how that's supposed to go. Project. Huh.
Right. I'm going to go ahead and drop off too, Jason. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming. See you next time.
All right.
Okay, I want to at least figure out this path thing before I drop off myself, or at least try to. Project builds path. How is this supposed to go? Will AI help me? Let's test suite run. Is that gonna work? Okay, we get a different error now at least. Also, that HTML was misformed. Okay. Undefined local variable or method, test suite run list. Not surprising. Test suite run list component, line 5. Yeah. So since I am test suite run list now, I can just remove that and do test suite runs.any. And so here, yeah, we have test suite runs, so that should be good. But we have another instance of test suite run list. In fact, we seem to have a number of them. Okay, now they're all gone. Okay, test suite run filter component. So we can do this. Project. Okay, yep. We need test suite run.project. Current user. Of course, we don't have that in this context. Okay. So where do we have to get that from? Test suite run list component. Okay. This is in a component also. So we'll have to pass this in multiple places. All right. And surely, even once I fix that, that won't be the end of the problem. So we'll have to do more. So I think this is a pretty good stopping point because next time when I pull this up, I'm going to see undefined local variable or method current user, and I will say, oh yeah, that's where I was. I'll have to pass the current user. So I think that makes a good stopping point. That's all for today. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.